See what happens.
Yeah, for sure. It'll be fun.
So, well, hey, man, it's great to meet you. And I want to begin our conversation with surviving the last 3.5 years or so.
Sure.
How did you get through the pandemic, and how did it change you?
Yeah, well, I'm a financial planner, and so the pandemic was interesting for me because I started in a corporate world, and then we were going independent, and to go independent, we plan this out for a few months and all these things, and our launch date to go independent was April of 2020, which we had decided back in December of 2019, right? And so like none of this had happened yet. I remember I heard someone say something about COVID. They called it the coronavirus at first for a long time, right? And they're like, oh, that's whatever, that's elsewhere. And so all this wasn't planned. And so literally we went independent and had to move all of our clients' accounts and money and everything right in the middle of when it was all down 35%, and the whole world's freaking out and panicking. And so not the greatest timing for all of that in hindsight, but it was just a great growth experience, I think, just in the business and in client relationships. And we were already using Zoom for a lot of people, for a lot of client meetings and all this kind of that. I like to say I was using Zoom before it was cool. And so that was kind of a natural transition to just hey, instead of you coming in, we're just going to switch it to Zoom like we've done before, and some of that. And then here it's a little bit smaller city, and so we didn't have as much of the lockdowns as you get in some of the bigger cities and whatnot. So it wasn't, my experience with it was much better, I think, than a lot of people's. And I still can't believe that we made that whole transition as far as investments and everything goes at the worst possible time. But we didn't lose any clients. And we gained some clients during the whole thing of people who, their advisors were freaking out and they couldn't get a hold of them and all these things. And we were there for them. So they appreciated that. So it was, it was an interesting time, I think, for everybody, right? And better for me than for many, I think.
You always hear these stories where kids have to grow up fast. They have special circumstances, things are going on, and almost sounds like that's what you had to do. You had to, you were baptized by fire. You had to perform. You didn't have a choice.
Right. And so we were still young at the time, like I had only been doing it for a few years. And so we were still in that build mode, in getting clients and all those things. And there's, if you're familiar with market history at all, it had been like 10 years of nothing but the market's going up. And so people just kind of start assuming like, oh, the market only goes up. There are no more of these things. Like we solved that back with the Great Recession. And then to have, 2020 and then, the big longer, 2-year 2022 to maybe now-ish, thing that we've been through with the inflation and all, it's been nothing but yo-yo this whole, basically my whole career of doing this. And so, yes, it is. You have to grow up fast. You have to learn how to communicate really well, really quickly. You have to make sure that you know what you're doing and you're not, leading people astray when they're trusting you with their life savings. And so, yeah, I think that's a good way to characterize it. You grow up fast for sure.
Totally. So you are an author and you're in the finance world, but let's get to the brass tacks. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of third graders. It's career day. And one of the kids is curious and says, hey, what do you do for a living? How do you answer?
For sure. Yeah, I would say, hey, so I help, your grandparents retire to stop working. When they're done working, they don't want to work anymore. We help them to stop working and make sure that money continues to flow and that they can, so that's called retirement, right? And so we will help them retire and to stay retired, because anyone can just stop working, right? But do you have what it takes? Do you have all the planning done and whatnot so that you can stay retired, stay enjoying your life and your grandkids, do the travel that you want to do, enjoy the lifestyle that you want, and still have money left over so that they can leave a little bit of money to your parents and maybe even a little bit to you and your other cousins and whatnot, depending on how everything else goes. So we just want to make sure that they get to make the most of their money, give the least amount of it to the government because we don't like them, the least amount of it to fees and to all these other things, and keep the most amount for themselves and for the ones that they love.
So what did you want to be in the third grade?
I would consider myself a late bloomer. I was totally different growing up than I am now. Like I was not ambitious. I came from a family that wasn't like particularly ambitious. Like they weren't, they just not a lot there. And so I, squandered some opportunities early. I don't remember wanting to be anything through all of grade school, all the way through high school. The only thing that I remember, and maybe it's just because what I'm doing now, I remember like in 6th grade, like meeting someone at church who was a financial advisor, and he was like the greatest guy, like, really helped out with the youth group, really got along with all of his kids and stuff, but was also just kind of kind of cool, kind of suave. And I didn't even know what a financial planner was, but I just knew that that's what he was. And I was like, oh, that could be kind of cool to be that someday. And then to come back around to that later was kind of cool. But really, I think it started for me kind of post high school and stumbled upon just like a personal development book, and I was like, oh wow, there's a lot out, because I didn't have like role models or people who were really pushing themselves to do more, to be more around me. And so I kind of discovered a lot of that in books and just became a, a voracious audiobook listener and just listened to tons of books. And that is really what made me want to go into this industry when I heard more about that and want to do a lot of the things that I do. And so now I'm also a huge advocate for people for listening to books and enjoying those and all the learning and stuff that you can get out of good podcasts, good books, those kind of things. And people sometimes poo-poo listening versus like reading books. Like, oh, you don't really read all those books, you just listen to them. I'm like, well, technically listening to people speak has been around a lot longer than reading has, right? For
Well
tens of
put.
thousands of years, that's all we learned was
Well put.
to learn by audio. And it's only been the past few hundred years that people have been able to read en masse. And so I actually think that if you're thinking about, most people actually would learn better listening to conversations, listening to audiobooks than reading, because reading is not a very natural state for us. And you can do it while you're driving, while you're mowing, while you're doing the dishes, all these other things. And so it's a great way to redeem that time, and time that you're spending doing chores and things that are boring can now become opportunities for learning and growth and pushing yourself. And so it's one of my absolute favorite things to do is listen to good podcasts, listen to good audiobooks.
I totally agree. I love it. I think that way. That's what it comes. My wife's a fifth grade teacher, and those
Mm,
kids beg her to read stories.
yep.
Kids love that. It's a part of like our DNA. So yeah, I don't see any distinction between listening or reading. You're divulging all of these words, and one way or another, the one thing that's going to actually filter that is your brain. So it doesn't matter if it's on a page or if it's floating auditorily through the air.
Yep. Well, I think part two. So like, so I've written just the one book so far. I think I'm gonna write another one this year, but like, and it's gotten great. And I've heard a lot of times like, man, you're such a great author. You have such a great way with words. Like, how did you learn how to do this? Like, did you take classes where you're an English major and like, and it's like, no, I took no classes on writing a book, did no training. I've just consumed a ton of books. And when you listen to or read all these really great books by all these really great authors, I think some of that stuff just kind of rubs off on
Yeah.
you, just in the way that they organize their thoughts and the way that they communicate those and the way they summarize those, break down big issues into small steps and all those things. And so I think that's kind of just come off of me, and I've been able to just kind of regurgitate that back out using the things that I want to talk about. And so that's been a fun experience. And I think I directly attribute my ability to write books to how many of them I've listened to. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, big fan.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. You kind of mentioned that you really didn't have any heroes, but has there been someone? I know there was this finance gentleman that you looked up to, but have you had a hero maybe later on in life, or somebody that's been really influential for you?
Yeah, and I think you could answer parents and stuff, great parents, great family, a lot of those kind of things. I won't go that route, even though I certainly could. I think even just professionally, there's a guy by the name of Nick Murray, he's got to be in his 80s now, who's been doing financial advising for 50 plus years. And his whole philosophy was, we got to stop trying to pick and choose stocks and funds and all these things, like earning a lot of money in the market in for retirement. All these things is much less about picking the right funds, picking the right managers, picking the right stocks, and much more about your behavior and can you stay invested over long periods of time, and just some of those more behavioral elements of investing. And it was the first I had heard of it, and I read a bunch of his books and subscribed to his newsletter and all that, and it really shaped the way that I do my practice. And I haven't been doing it as long as he has, but so it's nice to have that that 50 years of experience that he's been doing it to lean on as well, in addition to my own experience. So he really shaped a lot of how we explain it to clients, and it just clicks. Like, so many people are just so sick of always having to monitor the market, always having to try to jump in and out, trying to pick the right managers. Are we doing the right thing? And to have more of a behavioral aspect of it, and to just be able to, hey, we're going to have one plan. We're going to make sure that that's correct at the beginning, but then we're just going to stick to it, through thick and thin, and make sure that no matter what the market's doing, that we don't have to care because we're prepared for it either way, and some of these kind of things. And so I have to attribute a lot of my success to his philosophy, so I guess I'd consider him probably a hero of late.
So if you could meet one person on the planet right now and spend some time with them, pick their brain, who would it be?
Um, well, he would be good. The other one probably would be there's another guy in our industry called Michael Kitces, and he's kind of like if Nick Murray is the behavioral kind of softer side of the business, Kitces is the brains, right? He's got an entire alphabet soup behind his name, just like knows everything. And so it'd be great to sit down with him and chat up kind of more the specifics. You got to be right on that stuff too, right? You don't always
Yeah,
communicate all that to clients, but it's your job as a professional to know all that stuff and to make sure it's right. And we just give you the highlights, but you got to know what you're doing in the background if you're managing people's money and their futures. So,
absolutely. What's the best advice that you've ever gotten?
um, honestly, it was from some YouTube video or something that suggested reading books and redeeming some of that time when you're doing chores and stuff by listening to audio programs and those kind of things. I don't even know who it was, but I think that got me started on that track. And so now I listen to 52 books a year, have since 2018, just basically one a week on average. It's usually a bunch. I listen to in different domains of life, kind of one for each, and that way I'm always improving on with relationships or finances or my career or fitness, whatever it is. And so just having that stuff, and sometimes it's less about learning new things and more about just reinforcing the things that you already know, right? Because
Yeah.
if knowledge were enough, we'd all be billionaires with six-pack abs, right? We know how to do these things. It's the action, it's the belief that we need to continue to reinforce and continue to do that helps us actually get there. So for me, it's less about learning new things, although that's helpful too, and more about hey, continue to believe in the things that you already know and continue to do those things, because we know that if you do these things long enough, the compounding effect of that, like with money, same with actions and habits and those things, those will lead to good results down the road. You just got to stay the course and continue to act on your plan.
What was one of the first audiobooks that you listened to that hooked you? Whether it was the person reading it or the material, what was that book that hooked you in?
Um, Dave Ramsey's The Total Money Makeover was probably the first like full book that I listened to. I remember just starting it and then I listened to the whole thing start to finish, like one sitting. And I was like, wow, man, it's really cool when you actually know what you're doing with money. And that kind of piqued my interest in getting into this career as well. So that one, and then I think it was Eat That Frog by Brian Tracy. It was one of the first like personal
Okay.
development books I ever listened to, and it was just so practical. And I was
Yeah.
like, oh man, these are really good ideas. Like, how many other good ideas are there out there? And so I listened to a bunch of his stuff, and then I've got I've got all my I've been through enough now that I have recommendations that I'd recommend maybe over and above some of those initial books that I listened to. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, Atomic Habits is phenomenal. Some of these other ones. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Right on. So as an author, what's been the best fan letter you've ever gotten? Best response that you've gotten?
Yeah, I think, it's just some of them that it's the stories that have been from the people that, hey, I've done this myself for so long. I've been trying to do all these other strategies that are complicated and make sense. I keep making mistakes. I keep making, having all these issues. And then I read this book, and for the first time, especially the ones that say like, I've read 20 plus financial books, and this was the first one that I read that really clicked. That really was like, oh, this makes sense. I can do this. This is not some convoluted scheme. This is just it just makes intrinsic sense to a lot of people. And so I think I've gotten a couple of those of people who literally read more than a dozen plus personal finance books and have sent in or written the review on Amazon or whatever, and have stated that and said, but this one was the main one that really stood out to me and clicked for the first time. And so yeah, I mean, I don't know that I've written the best financial book of all time. I think so, but I'm totally biased on that.
Sure.
But to hear that from other people who isn't, it's not the only financial book that they've read and they're like, oh, this is really cool, right? Because I think we've all done that, right? You read your first personal development book, and I was like, oh man, this is a really good one. But then you go read a bunch, and you're like, yeah, that one actually wasn't that good compared to these other ones you read later. And so it's fun to hear that from people who have kind
Yeah.
of read the whole field, and you still end up at least the top part of their list up there, and so that feels good.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you said it took you a while to find your way and your passion in your life. So let me ask you this. If you were to have a dream tonight and run into that senior and high school version of you, 18 years old, and you could give that version of you a piece of advice based on the wisdom you've gained in your life, what advice would you impart on your young version?
Um, I would just tell myself to start earlier what I started doing, which is to, start thinking about what you really want in life. We call it goal setting these days, right? And then build processes to actually work towards that and have habits of continually infusing yourself with messages that are going to continue to push you along that direction, whether it's good podcasts, good books, whatever else. Because there is no shortcut. I mean, you've interviewed what, hundreds, thousands of people now, right? You know, there's no shortcut to success, to being who you want, and it is finding the right things to do and then doing them over and over and over again over a long period of time. And the earlier you can start that, the better. And so I found that a little bit later than 18. And so if I could have started that, the 4 or 5 years earlier, then I would be even farther than I am now. But and that's something anyone can do, right? There's no, for the first probably 150 books that I listened to, it was all for free on Libby, right? Which is like your digital library, right? And so if you go to your library, you set up an account, you download the app, you can log in there, and there's all this wisdom, all this inspiration is all available out there for free to anyone.
Yeah.
And so you don't have to be successful already. You don't have to have, an inheritance from your parents to start a business. You don't have to do any of these things. Like, anyone can listen to great material and just start acting on that information. And so I like that kind of advice better, because so many times you hear interviews with certain people, or you hear all these success stories, but then you find out they had just massive advantages that most people don't have, and you're like, okay. And so it's easier to start writing off success as you need to have some prerequisite that I don't have, and since I don't have that, I can't get there. And so I like the stories of people that started with nothing and just started doing good things. They weren't lucky or anything. They just good habits, good actions, good disciplines that anyone can do, and you do them long enough, and you'll find that success.
Yeah, those are the best stories. It's such an American tapestry. So everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, colleagues, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Ooh, that's a good question. I am someone on a journey to trying to have success in all areas of life, as I've defined it. And I think, so many of us, we're taught to, and we pursue success in just one area or maybe 2 areas of life. Work and financial success is big for a lot of people, because it's the kind that you can demonstrate, right? You can drive the fancy car, you can live in the big house, you can have this prestigious title, and so it's an easy way to demonstrate to other people, like, I'm successful, and their marriage is crumbling, and their kids won't talk to them, and they're becoming unhealthy, and so, like, I think it can be easy to find success in a couple areas of life at the expense of all the others. And I don't want to do that. I don't want that to be my story. And so I'm trying to prove that you can have success in all areas of life, health, relationships, your spiritual life, finances, work, even fun, even recreation, right? And that you can maintain success in all those and grow in all those at the same time. You're probably gonna have slower success, right? You're not gonna have as much work success if you're trying to actually enjoy your family and spend time with them, as the people who are working 80 hours a week, for the first 20 years of their life. But so it might all happen a little slower, but I think it all actually supports one another. And I think I'm trying to prove it, right? But I think you will get farther in life if you pay attention to all those areas, because people who have tremendous career success, but a lot of at-home strife, and that's not a place that they enjoy being. It's not a place of support and love and all that. I think they will end up hamstringing themselves down the road, as opposed to people who have supportive families, who enjoy that time, who have great friends, right? Great health. And so too many of us, we sacrifice a lot of areas of our life for success in one, and then we have to try to get all those areas of our life back. You sacrifice your health and your relationships to earn money, and then you try to pay money to get back your relationships and your health. And doesn't seem
Yeah.
so. I'm on a journey to try to be successful in all those areas. I haven't figured it all out yet, but through a lot of wisdom of other people, I think we're finding the right track. So
You tapped into my Libra bone. That's kind of that balance. You just kind of have to get the scales going. So, of all of these things that you've done so far up to this very day, what are you the proudest of that you've done in life?
having a great family, I'm proudest of. Like, I really enjoy my wife, and we have a wonderful relationship. I got 2 daughters, one more on the way here. I love hanging out with them, and I really love the life that we've built there. And so I think, I just don't know that anything else will, I could say I'm proud of launching this business and doing that, or of the book, or whatever else, but I think none of that stuff matters if you lose your family along the way. And so I think I'm most proud of those relationships, and yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
Right on. So Freeman, if anyone wants to get your book, they want to hire you, learn more about you, reach out. What's the best way to do that?
Yeah, so my financial planning practice is Lacrosse Financial Planning. It's named after the city that I live in, but I have this whole separate educational side that I do, which is called Retire Mentorship. It's one word, retirement and mentorship, kind of pushed together there, because we want to be your mentor to and through retirement, right? So you can retire successfully and stay successfully retired. And so all that's just 100% free resources. We have a weekly podcast, a weekly email that goes out, a quarterly magazine, a bunch of workshops on there. You can get my book for free on there if you sign up, and we'll just send it to you. We want to make because so much of the information that I've got that have improved my life, right, I got for free, like we talked about, right? Free podcasts, Libby for free. Now I paid for it, but so we want to make all this great information available for free to people. You can take action beyond that, right, and actually incorporate those things in your lives and incorporate the financial principles we teach and some of those things. And then we can help you with the implementation as well on our financial planning side. But yeah, retirementorship.com is the best place to find me. There you can find our podcasts and our newsletters and all these things. And it's all there for free to just help people on that journey. And we know that if we help enough people for free, that some of them will come back around and want us to help them on the implementation side too. And we'd rather spend our time generating free content for people than spend our money, advertising to people that don't want to be advertised to, and people will find us. So that'd be the best place.
Makes total sense. Freeman, this has been great, man. Thank you so much. So much good came out of this. Thank you for taking your time out. Have a great 2024.
You too. Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it.
You bet. And real quick.